what this presentation is about. We want to talk about how you position yourself to get opportunities in the future. And I want you to take a look at this text. This is actually a text from a student, a former student of mine, that this probably came in around April, I think. And it's a really interesting, it tells a really interesting story. And he says, he's at the top of the text, "By the way, I didn't apply for that job. That was just a recruiter looking at my LinkedIn profile. So again, the stuff you taught us in that one credit internship class was worthwhile." And so the way that people are getting jobs today is changing. And this is why it's super critical that you have a LinkedIn profile. And we're going to walk through what that looks like and really some best practices for your LinkedIn profile. But if you don't have one, and many of you in this room have heard me say this, if you don't have one, you must get one. And the reason you have to have one is this. What's happening today, just like you see with Kyle up here, people are not applying for jobs anymore. What they're doing is employers are looking, they're going out to LinkedIn, and they're looking for people that have the skill set that matches what they need. And so you have to be very thoughtful about what you have in your LinkedIn profile. You are basically creating an invitation for people to invite you for a job. And you have to start early. So I've been on LinkedIn. LinkedIn started in 2003. I'm a pretty early adopter. I've been on LinkedIn since 2004, like December 2004. A long time. And over time, when I think about it, I add things to LinkedIn. I have several students in the room here. So my students cannot graduate with a bachelor's degree if they don't have a LinkedIn profile. They must have a LinkedIn profile. And I think a lot of times students say, well, why is this important? Why is this necessary? Because the day of the resume is gone. Because just like Kyle here, and think about this, $35,000. He had a job already, and somebody found him on LinkedIn and offered him $35,000 more over what he was making. So let me just give you some numbers as an example. Let's say he was making $70,000 at his job, and then someone reaches out and says, we want to pay you more. What is he making after the new job? Can anybody do that math? $105,000, and I'm not giving exact numbers. You don't know who Kyle is, luckily, but if you look it up, you'd probably find him. And of course, those aren't the exact numbers, but they're pretty close. So think about what a $35,000 raise can do just because someone finds you on LinkedIn. And his LinkedIn profile was because, as he said, of the way that I require students to put a LinkedIn profile together. So that tells you everything that you need to know about this platform. So here's the problem. In today's world, I'm going to show you what the hiring process looks like from a technical standpoint, but basically, here's the hiring process today. I need somebody that has a certain skill, and I go out, and I find that person, and I tell them, come and apply for a job. And you can see here, these are articles from this month. So these are all current articles in which employers are basically saying, yes, it's no longer about certain things that we looked for in the past. We're looking specifically for skills. So this is an important takeaway, folks. As you're working on your LinkedIn profile, you need to be very specific about the skill set that you have on your profile. It's got to be very thoughtful, and you've got to be very diligent about updating that. Let me just give you a quick example. Let's say you graduate with a degree, and you want to be a writer. And let's say you worked at a fast food restaurant, let's call it McDonald's, and you were very good at making burgers. And then you go and you get a college degree, and you have a degree in English, and you enter the workforce. Someone like a burger joint might say, hey, we want someone to do blogging for us, so we'd like them to have a degree, and it would be really great if they worked at a McDonald's at some point. So a lot of times people think, should I put McDonald's or whatever that low-level job is, should I put that on my LinkedIn profile? Yes, because it's all about skill building. And resumes have limitations. So some companies still use resumes. That is still, I'm not saying you should do away with a resume. You need to have a resume. But a lot of people think, I have a good resume. I don't need a LinkedIn. Today, you don't need a resume as much as you need a stellar LinkedIn profile. two key limitations to having a resume. Number one is, how long should a resume be? I'm going to ask you. There is a rule about resumes. What is the ideal length for a resume? One page. 1 to 2 pages for a resume. Here's the problem. I have 30 years of experience with all kinds of crazy stuff. I can't fit that on 2 pages. Does anybody know where the rule of a 2-page resume came from? It's the front and back, but where did this rule originate? Why? Who originally said we can only have a 1-page resume? There was this. That's the second problem with resumes. German said how long it takes to look at a resume. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. In 1976, somebody did a study, and in that study, they found out a resume should be no more than 2 pages. So we today use this 2-page rule because of some study that occurred in a millennium long ago, right? So we have these stupid rules that exist for long periods of time, and if you ask any employing manager, if you try to send them 4 or 5 pages, they're going to say, we're going to rip it up and not even look at it. And that's the second reason, which German mentioned, which is time. Nobody has time. How long, this is another question, this is the second limitation of resumes, how long do hiring managers look at resumes? Does anybody know? So if you send your resume in and you take all this time and everything's perfect, how long are they going to look at your resume for? Maybe a day. Not quite. 15 seconds? Anybody want to go for less? Less than 10 seconds, about 8 seconds is how someone looks at a resume. How much information can you convey in 8 seconds? You cannot, right? And so it's very much about luck when people are getting jobs. These are the limitations to resumes, and what people are finding is this is why they're not effective and why companies are starting to move toward other methodologies. By the way, there's no limitation on LinkedIn, so you can have 10,000 years of work history on LinkedIn and nobody's going to care. In fact, the more that you have on LinkedIn, the better the skill set you can convey. So this is what happens in the hiring process. This is from research that occurred in the 1970s, but this research actually, unlike the resume research, this research is still relevant. So this is, think of it as a psychological model about how hiring works. And so what happens is this in the hiring process. You are the job seeker. You're the arrow on the left. I want a job. I have a certain set of skills. I have to advertise those skills. That's what a resume does. That's what LinkedIn does. It's what a cover letter does. I've got skills I want to advertise. And we call that signaling. So anytime I want to communicate something to someone, I signal to them. As an example, what did I just signal? What am I expecting? Some response, right? That's a signal. Hello, that's a signal. If I put my hand out to shake it, these are all signals. My resume is a signal about what information I want someone to know about me when I'm getting hired, but it's very limited. Whereas LinkedIn, I can put everything on that. Now I have to get through this. I have to get through the screening process. And in the screening process, someone looks at a resume for 8 seconds and says, Frank is not very good. They didn't turn it over and read the back page because they weren't feeling well that day. They didn't think about it. They didn't realize that the second page got disconnected. There are all these problems with manual screening. But in LinkedIn, I can type a search and I could say, tell me someone who worked at McDonald's, tell me someone that has an English degree, tell me someone that has done some blogging, and now I can find the 18 people in the state of Pennsylvania that have the ideal experience to do that job. And I can invite all 18 of those people to apply. By the way, 9 of those people might say, I'm not going to apply. Cool. I still have 9 other people to talk to. That's a lot more effective than sending a resume, having a stack of 1,000 of them, going through those, spending 7 seconds missing critical information. And this is why everything's going to move to LinkedIn. And there are some hiring managers out there that say, I'll never use it. They will use it because it's much more efficient. It may take some more time, but that's where things are going to go. So this is just at a high level glance, right? So the reality is people don't look at LinkedIn profiles per se. They really want to query the data. That means ask the data questions. But I can put a ton of stuff here. Look at this. I've got 23 licenses and certificates. I can't put that on 2 pages of resume. And if I try, it's going to be like 4-point Times New Roman font. Nobody's going to see that. And so it's really critical to have all of your information loaded into your LinkedIn profile. And we're going to go through what it looks like to have an effective LinkedIn profile. And I want you to think about questions, because I think this is the hardest thing. People say, what do I do, right? So I'm going to give you a few slides of what an ideal LinkedIn profile looks like, and then you can ask me questions about how to tweak that. So just like the resume, if you do not want to get a job, have a lot of misspellings. That's a great way to not get hired by someone. Just have misspellings. It makes you look foolish, right? It makes you look sloppy. So you've got to make sure that all of your text is clean and does not have poor grammar or misspellings. You want to look for any type of certifications you can get. So a lot of times students have access to something called LinkedIn Learning. And in LinkedIn Learning, you can go in and earn badges. And now there are badges all over the place. I spoke to a company yesterday that's offering badges now to 13,000 members in their organization. You all will get opportunities. If you're in high school, you'll have opportunities for badges. If you're in college, you'll get opportunities for badges. Your employers will offer opportunities for badges. Take them all and put them into your LinkedIn profile, because there might be one unique skill in there that you didn't think was important that somebody else thinks is important. And badges are a good way, and certifications are a good way to do that. Never lie. This is an important one. So when students are sending in their resumes for me to review them, because remember, they have to have, their LinkedIn profiles and resumes, this is the same in both. When they're sending those in for me to review them, remember, they have to have this to graduate. One of the most common problems is people put the wrong degree on their resume. And I'll give you an example. We have a lot of students that are doing like an accounting concentration, but they have a bachelor's, they're getting a bachelor's degree in business, but their concentration is accounting, and they say, I have a bachelor's in accounting. To which I say, if your employer or prospective employer gets your academic records, they're going to say you lied, because you have a bachelor's degree in business, not a bachelor's degree in accounting. You have to get the specifics right, because it looks like you're lying otherwise, and then someone's not going to hire you. And this is the hardest one, the last one. Don't just list skills. Here's what people do. They say things like, I'm good at customer service. Can anybody tell me what good customer service is? You can't define it. Yes, go ahead. Okay, then you should tell me you're being friendly and you help your co-employees, right? Because no one knows what good customer service is. I actually tell students that's dumb, because no one can identify good customer service. There are characteristics that make up good customer service, and that's really what you're looking to focus on in the development of your LinkedIn profile. And think about this last bullet. It's an action, right? You want to be able to show the actions that you can perform, right? Why? Because that's related back to the skills. So I can do this thing. And so a good example of that is, in situation X, I did Y, which led to outcome of Z, right? So as an example, if I am a cashier at Walmart, this would sound something like, in the situation of being a cashier, I can process 100 clients per hour, which leads to better customer service. Now, here's an interesting thing. I know what you're thinking. Who cares? But what is that going to tell an employer? What do you think that would tell an employer if you had something like that listed on your resume or in your LinkedIn?
You rush and don't care about the customer.
You what?
You rush and don't care about the customer.
You rush and don't care about the customer. Does the customer care about how friendly the cashier is in Walmart? Do they care about how fast they get out of Walmart? Have you ever stood in a line at Walmart? All I care about is get me out of here, right? I don't care about the friendliness necessarily. I'm like, get me out of here. So if someone tells me they could process 100 people at a line in the grocery store, that tells me two things. A, they're concerned with how well they can perform the service. But number two, how often do you stop to quantify the things that you do? Think about that. I can do X number of items in a day. If you tell that to a prospective employer, they're going to say, wow, this person actually pays attention to what they do. So we're sending all sort of signals with these types of statements. Now, things you want to avoid is, I'm great at customer service, I have excellent customer service, I'm really good with people. Don't say that kind of stuff. What you really want to do is you want to say, my customer service rating is a 4.2 out of 5.
I won the Employee of the Month award X number of times. Those are fantastic outcomes that we should be telling people, not I'm good at customer service, right? So now you could understand why I think the customer service thing is like not a very good thing to put on your resume. So what's cool about LinkedIn, as I said earlier, you've got unlimited space. So put everything there. I have jobs dating back 30 years there because over the course of my career, here are different fields that I've worked in. Sales, technology, marketing, business analyst. All these things matter. I am a consultant for a book publisher. I'm their top national consultant on teaching Excel because what I do well is I think about how to improve the classroom, and I'm okay at Excel. So those two things are skills that a publisher put together and said, hey, we don't need the best Excel person to talk to other educators about Excel. We need someone who thinks about teaching people to talk to other educators about Excel, right? So you have to think about how these skills kind of come together. Volunteer experience is really important on your LinkedIn profile. A custom URL when you set up your LinkedIn profile, it's going to give you like all these letters in your name. My LinkedIn profile is linkedin.com/in/Sorokach. It's easy. I was lucky. I got an odd last name, so I was able to obtain that. But your first and last name or some combination of that have a very specific URL. I require students before they graduate to have a very specific URL, and that's exactly why, because then it's very memorable. Anything that you can highlight in terms of badges, those are phenomenal things that you want to put on your profile. So let's talk for just a minute about badges. And so you'll see all these terms coming down the road in the future. E-badges, digital badges, credentials, micro-credentials, digital credentials, all these terms basically mean the same thing. What it is some sort of icon that represents a series of skills or something you've done. I even see this now with membership. So I joined an organization, and they said, all right, you can get a badge that says you're part of this organization. I was like, great, I'll put that on my LinkedIn profile as well. So you want to start collecting badges. What's really important about badges is for young people, where do you folks find badging? This is natural for young people. You're the gaming expert, Parks. Where have you seen badges before? In video games, when you unlock a skill. Thank you very much. Excellent point. Scout camps. This is what the origin of, thank you very much. What was your first name? Hunter? Thank you, Hunter. This is actually the origin. Most people don't realize this. The origin of digital badges comes from like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. That's where the concept came from. Because as a scout, when you earn a badge, that represents a skill. And then coming forward, as Parkson mentioned, now that's where we see these in video games. So for young people, these are natural things. Chase them because these all represent skills. And why these are so important is this. Here's an example of a badge that I have on my profile. What it does is it shows very specific skills. And as I wrap up here, I'm going to give you a prime example of why these are important. Here's what happens. Remember signaling and screening earlier in the presentation? An employer says, they list a job, right? And they say, in that job, we want someone that knows Excel. Everybody wants students that have Excel experience today. So they say, we want someone that knows pivot tables. But what do people put in their LinkedIn profile and on their resumes? When you're listing Excel as a skill, what do people typically say? I know what? I know spreadsheets, or I know Excel. I know Microsoft Office. There was a study done 2 years ago. In that study, 88%, and this is reported by Harvard, 88% of people that felt they were qualified for a job did not get the job. And here's what's happening. Employers are saying, we want someone that knows pivot tables. People applying for the job say, I know Office, I know spreadsheets, I know Excel. That doesn't match. And those people never get an opportunity to apply for the job because the employer is saying, I need pivot tables. And unless you list pivot tables, you don't get the opportunity. And the problem is this. How many functions does Excel have? Hundreds. Who's going to list hundreds of So this is a badge I earned for Excel, and this is just a snippet of it. But if you look at this, there are about 30 skills listed here. So if an employer wanted to know if I knew pivot tables, it's in there. And so by having the badge, it represents all of those underlying skills, which now gives me a better opportunity not to get kicked out of that job search. So just remember this important fact. One last thing that I think is important for everybody to remember. An employer who's looking to hire you is looking at all of your social media. That's the last important fact I have to leave you with. So you are building a brand. All of your social platforms are part of your brand. You may think that what I'm doing over here on Snapchat or Instagram is not important. Everybody's watching everything. So use LinkedIn to build your professional profile. Use that as your platform for getting a job in the future. Put all of your academic accomplishments, put all of your job accomplishments. I tell people to put videos up there. If you do a poster for a presentation, put that on there. If you work on a project, put that on there. Put your jobs on there. And then guard your other social profiles. All right. What questions can I answer for you folks? Awesome question. Well, okay. German just asked, what happens if you have a hobby that's job-related? Let's break this down into two items. What if you have a hobby that's job-related, and what if you have a hobby that is not job-related? Probably two different answers. If it's job-related, I would absolutely include it. Do you have an example? You like real estate, correct? Okay. Wholesaling real estate, that you're kind of doing this as a hobby right now. So let's say German wants to work in real estate and his hobby is kind of looking at markets. But let's say he also has a little side cleaning business, right? And he's like, I spent a few bucks on this. This isn't that important. It's important. Any of those things related to the job, you definitely want to put up on your LinkedIn profile. Stuff that's not related, like I like to run. I don't have that up there, but I have seen people make arguments that for those things that are hobbies that indicate, let's say, lifestyle improvements, you might want to include those. So I don't know that there's a final verdict on what the correct answer is and what is not the correct answer, but I would just say that's just like this point right here. Anything that looks like it relates, that has a positive reflection on you, I think that is fair game to put that out on your LinkedIn profile. What else? Other questions? Sure, Deanna, go ahead. Okay, very good. So first question is, how do I stand out in my LinkedIn profile? Number one, have a professional photo. So have a photo, have a good URL, have all of your jobs listed, have details for all of your jobs in bullet point format. That is the most efficient way to do it. Because some people still read profiles. So you want it to be able to be read quickly by a person. Any kind of badges or any other credentials that you can put up there, those are all positive things. But the real differentiator, any video, any multimedia, anything like that you have, add that to your LinkedIn profile. Next question. Sure. So what most of the research shows right now is you are more at a detriment if you don't have a photo than if you have a photo that represents, let's say you're worried about, as you said, discrimination. And the other thing that I would say is this. There's two ways to look at a LinkedIn profile. One is people are searching the database to get information. So think of that as like phase one of trying to find Deanna to hire her. Phase two is then I come into the profile and I look at the person. They've probably made a decision before they've looked at the photo if they're identifying characteristics of the person that they want. The other reason that a photo is positive is, let's say you get an interview and I say, come on into the interview, we're going to sit down. The employer has the ability to see who you are before you show up. So at least when you show up, they could say, oh, I could pick Deanna out of the group here and I know which person Deanna is to come on in. So what it actually, I think, has the reverse effect of what people think it does. Instead of adding to discriminatory factors, it actually eliminates some of those because now I feel like I know you by type in